Hello, my name is Sarah Spar Stubbs, and I'm one of the chaplains at Matthews Glen, and I'm grateful for a moment with you today. Recently, my husband and I were on a little day trip, and we stopped at a convenience store for some gas and some sodas, and so I ran in to buy our drinks, and as I walked up to the counter to pay, the cashier said to me, "Okay, little bit, what you got for me?" And I just laughed. I said, "Did you just call me little bit?" And she laughed and said, "You know, you are a little short." And I said, I am. You are right about that. And we laughed, and I paid and moved along. And I got in the car, and I was still laughing about it because this woman who sees a lot of people every day paid attention to me. She saw me. And, you know, it was a funny little moment, and I was grateful that she paid attention to me. Well, it is good when others see us and pay attention to us. I'm going to read a scripture today from King David, who knew that God saw him, that God had seen him through hard times, and that God was with him in all of it. And I want to read this passage for you today. This is from Psalm chapter 40, verses 1 through 3. I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined to me and heard my cry. He drew me up from the desolate pit, out of the miry bog, and set my feet upon a rock, making my steps secure. He put a new song in my mouth, a song of praise to our God. Many will see and fear and put their trust in the Lord. I love that image, that from the miry bog, that God had set David's feet on a solid place. He described it as a rock. And then God gave him a new song to sing. Every time I read any of these Psalms about God putting our feet on a solid place, I think about a time when I was tubing on a river and I flipped out of my tube and it wasn't going well. And I was floundering around and grabbed my tube, and gratefully there was a very large rock there that I scrambled up on to gather myself. I mean, it was a literal rock that gave me a moment to capture my emotions and get in a better place so I could jump back in the tube and get down the river when it wasn't going so well. And so, sometimes God doesn't provide a literal rock for us, but I think about how God has taken us from the muddy places of our lives to a more solid place. And David was writing about that experience. We don't know what he had been through, just that he could see how God had led him through and taken him from this stuck, muddy place to the solidness of a rock. And I wonder how you have experienced that in your life, how God has taken you to a solid place when you were going through a difficult time. Or can you even think of a time when God put a new song in your mouth and gave you a new song to sing after a difficult chapter? And so I feel like David's words to us in this psalm invite us to look back and see what God has done in our lives. And with that assurance of what God has done in our past, we can have trust and hope as we look to the future, that when we find ourselves in those muddy places again, that God can do that once again for us, to give us a solid place to land and a new song in our mouth. I don't know what you're facing today. Maybe life feels very solid to you today, and I invite you to live in a place of gratitude for that. Perhaps life feels a little muddy to you today. Look back and see what God has done with you and through you and for you. And look ahead with hope and trust that God can do it again. There is a solid place to land with God, and God can put a new song in our mouth. Friends, take this into the day ahead. Thanks for sharing this moment again with me. I'll see you again soon. You take care.